everybody, Matt Maran here, and today I am driving a rented Nissan Sentra heading to Ohio to pick up my new car. So I'll answer all the questions here in this video. Why a new car, why a trip, why I picked what I picked. But before I reveal what I'm going to get, I'm just going to lay out why. Because the last time I kind of gave an update on my personal car situation was whenever I sold my 2019 Ford Mustang Bullitt back last spring. And that was sold because I couldn't afford it and because I never drove it. So why am I getting a new car? I'm sure many of you are probably very confused, and it's an idea that I've been slowly thinking more and more about over the past few months here. So since I sold the Bullitt, I will say that, I've observed that, there's been some times where it's a little inconvenient to not have a car. I try to just, do the press car thing and just have all of those, since I do usually have at least one press car every week, to drive, and so I don't need that. And I also have, my wife's Mach-E as a backup vehicle that, she drives all the time, and, but there's really, most of the time, no need for me to have my own personal vehicle. And so that's why I, it was like, this Bullitt's just sitting here, it's worth a bunch of money still, I have a bunch of equity that's just not doing anything, I might as well, just sell it, as hard as that was to do. And it just, it made me sad because, again, I didn't have the time to drive it because I was so busy always driving the press cars to do a good review on them and put miles on those. And so, there's a lot of times where I'm going to the airport at 4 in the morning where I had to do, an Uber ride, and, there's a lot of times where I had to ask someone for a ride, or I had to, there was these little gaps where, if I didn't have a press vehicle, I was, kind of sometimes looking for a ride, trying to, just spending extra money on, Ubers and all this stuff. And so whenever I saw actually that my friends at TFL, were picking up these basically free Fiat 500Es and a lot of other really cheap deals, Nissan Leafs and a bunch of other stuff out there in Colorado, it kind of got me thinking, I wonder if I can just pick up a dirt cheap EV just as a backup car, literally like a golf cart to get me around whenever I, need transportation. This is not a car that's going to be a sports car. I'm not going to focus on content with this vehicle. I will give my usual, updates, once a year or more often than that if it has issues and things I need to talk about. But, it's not going to be a vehicle that I'm going to do content on. It's not, for the channel necessarily. It's just to have a backup car for whenever I don't have press vehicles. And I wanted something electric because I didn't want to waste money on oil changes, and it's a vehicle that would be driven maybe 1,000 miles a year tops. And so, electric vehicles are more happy to sit around for, extended periods of time compared to a gas vehicle with everything being lubricated. And, just those don't like to sit for long periods of time on a regular basis. And, because of the tax credit, which is going to be going away most likely very shortly, I wanted to cash in and, get a vehicle that has that $7,500 tax rebate. Electric vehicles, in my opinion, aren't going to get any cheaper from here on out. This is about as cheap as they're going to get, until we have, battery costs falling and all that other stuff. But, I kind of wanted to strike while the iron was hot here and, pick up something while I had an opportunity before, these cheap EVs go away. And so as a result, I am leasing this vehicle. I didn't buy it. I know buying EVs is usually not a good idea. So it is a lease, so I can get that tax credit. And it's, again, just super, super cheap. So as far as, the stuff that I considered a bunch of stuff, but basically my only criteria was what is the cheapest. That was really the only thing. I was even open to stuff like Chevy Equinox, Chevy Blazer, even though they don't have Apple CarPlay, and I hate how they don't have Apple CarPlay. I was even willing to overlook that if they were going to be the cheapest one and the cheapest option. Now, I didn't have a price point in mind. It was just like, what is the cheapest I can get these things for? I knew I wasn't going to get a free car like you can get in Colorado with those Fiat 500Es because they have insane state, tax incentives, and it's because of the state that, they're able to get those things so cheap. So here in Pennsylvania where I live, there's no real incentives for EVs, so it was just a matter of, calling around to dealerships, figuring out what stuff people were desperate to get rid of and who was desperate enough to get to a super low price. And so I actually called around for about a month and a half, kind of feeling it out and saying, okay, well, where is the floor here? Like, how low can I go before, I realize that I'm kind of at the bottom of the well here and I can't get any lower. And so it's, it was a lot of calling, a lot of, dealing with incompetent dealers that, didn't call me back or couldn't figure out how to, do a proper quote, or, once I started getting some competitive quotes, dealing with dealers that just had no clue, like, oh, well, that sounds like the best deal, and just kind of throwing their hands up in the air and not competing. And so, it's a lot of work. I will say that, there was a very time-consuming thing calling around and, getting quotes from, at this point, it's in the realm of maybe 25 or so quotes that I've, probably got, or dealerships that I called or tried to, figure stuff out with. I mean, it was a lot. So it didn't come easily, I will say, this deal. But before I reveal the car, I will reveal the price to kind of, provide some of the rationale here for, why I got this. So the deal that I ended up with for the vehicle is $130 a month, sign and drive, 0 down, and that's with taxes and fees included. Even with the cheap Fiat 500 leases in Colorado, those did not include taxes. You had to pay like $1,200 up front in taxes on those. So my deal is including all those taxes and fees, everything included, literally just signing and driving, and that's it. $130 a month, 0 down. And so, I'm pretty proud of that number, regardless of what vehicle it is. Just literally getting transportation for $130 a month these days is, to me, pretty remarkable that that's where the deals are at. And some people have even gotten better deals. If you are a very savvy lessee, you will know that, you can do like one pays and get rid of the finance charge on the lease and, get stuff even cheaper potentially. But I wanted to spread it out with just a regular monthly payment instead of paying money up front, and spread out those costs, over the course of the lease instead. And by the way, that lease, what I was able to do, I was able to get it that low because it's a 5,000 mile a year lease, which obviously for most people with, commuting jobs and stuff is not going to make sense. But for me, 5,000 miles is far too many, but that's the lowest that they would go. And I did do a 42-month lease to also kind of extend that out a little bit, especially, with the current administration. This kind of lasts that entire term and, locks in for me cheap transportation and a cheap backup vehicle in case prices do go crazy with tariffs or whatever happens here in the next 4 years. At least I will know that I have a cheap means of transportation for $130 a month, and also cheap because I'm not paying for gas, not paying for oil changes, not paying for any of that stuff. And so, that's kind of why it's like just insanely cheap to own, insanely cheap to, have. And that's kind of was the appeal. And that's why it's like, okay, $130 a month, I can justify. Now, I will say, insurance is more expensive on EVs. And so with my insurance company, my quote is starting off around $82 a month, but I do have like the tracker thing, which, once it sees that I never drive the vehicle, will lower itself down to about $66 a month for insurance. So even there, all in, again, once that renews and I get that reduced rate, I'm still under $200 a month, all in, insurance included. And that was a amount of money I was comfortable paying to always make sure I have a backup car. Because in addition to just the inconvenience of Ubering around places or asking people for rides, it's also just there's times where, my wife Beth is in the Mach-E, and if I don't have a press vehicle, I'm stranded at home. And if there was ever, any reason where I needed to, take my daughter somewhere, or do something, I wanted to make sure that I just always had a car on standby. That was really the bottom line, to ease my anxiety, of not being stranded in the house in some kind of, crazy scenario, which again is a, very rare chance of something like that happening, but that was kind of, the main rationale there. And also the other thing I will add for why I'm, deciding to get a car again is also that, whenever I was dependent on the press vehicles for transportation, over the past year or so here, I was more inclined to accept stuff that I knew probably wouldn't do super well on the channel just because I needed that transportation. I wanted to have that car. And so now having a car, and that kind of gives me independence again to not be fully dependent on press vehicles for transportation, and I can say no to more press vehicles that I know are just going to be a waste of time, because all the time of filming it and mostly just the time of editing it, if it's a full review, that's 8 to 12 hours of editing time for me that could be better spent on another vehicle that I know will do better than the stuff that I may just accept, again, just to keep the press cars rolling. So, I really think it will actually help the channel in the long run. Maybe it won't. We will see. Time will tell about about all this stuff as far as, you know, how often I'm actually going to ever need this car and how much it actually does help me in the channel. But again, it's a cheap enough a cost that I thought it was worth the risk, and that's why I'm going for it. So the reason why I'm in a rental car headed to Ohio is because the dealer that was able to give me the deal that I needed to get to, the cheapest deal, was actually in Kentucky, and they have a 300-mile delivery limit, and so, you know, they agreed to meet me in the middle of Ohio, and I'll do the delivery in a parking lot in Ohio and then drive it the rest of the way home. But I'm very thankful they were able to do a delivery, again, especially with something where they're losing money on the deal. You know, they're not making any money on this, and they're still willing to deliver. I was very thankful for that, and so, you know, the dealer was really great, and I'll talk more about, you know, everything once I reveal the car here. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep on motoring here to Ohio, and I will show you the car when we get there. And here it is, the Fiat 500e. This is a 2024 model year. That was part of, you know, the great deals. The fact this is a 2024 I'm taking delivery of in 2025. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. If you guys watched my review on this late last year, you'll know that I really actually enjoyed this little thing. And if you know me, you know I love retro stuff. I love stuff that is small. I love, you know, fun little hot hatches and things like that. Now this I wouldn't classify as a hot hatchback. It's got, you know, 161 pound-feet of torque, but only 117 horsepower. But again, this is supposed to be a backup just car for when I don't have, you know, a run around. It's just cheap transportation, but it's also fun transportation. And I figured if I'm going to get something just as a little, you know, backup vehicle, why not have it be fun? And I just, again, I loved reviewing it, and you know, whenever I was shopping all the other competitors that I was considering, at the end of the day, this was also the cheapest. That's the bottom line. You know, all the other stuff that I was considering either started at higher MSRPs and maybe they had bigger discounts, but whenever you got down to, you know, the taxes and the out-the-door pricing or just the amount of discounts required, you know, the Fiat dealers were the ones that were willing to play ball the most. And when you think about this compared to the other competitors, basically everyone has more range. They're better suited for American roads versus this, you know, is made for Europe, and I'm so happy they brought it here. I was always excited to see these, you know, come to the States whenever they announced it, and you know, but it's not a car that sells very well or very easily to American buyers, and so I think there's a little more desperation from a lot of the you know, Fiat dealers. But I mean, a lot of them, they weren't willing to deal, and this is why I ended up going with Don Franklin Auto in Kentucky. They were the one that said, you know what, we want to make a deal on this. We want to get to your price point. I had, you know, again, gotten quotes from various other dealers, but the lowest I was able to get to was like 147 from another one in PA. And, you know, they were like, you know what, we can do even better than that. And I will also say I have to give a huge thank you to Stellantis and Kimberly at Stellantis. They did give me a discount code. It's 5% off. I appreciate that. But this thing was discounted way beyond that to, again, get to $130 a month. But that was certainly a huge help. So I want to give a thank you to them. But my plans for this vehicle, you know, again, just driving it as needed, not going to have any actual content planned aside from, you know, a yearly update on, you know, how it's been. But, you know, I'm still going to be completely honest, even though, yes, Stellantis helped me out with the discount code. I'm not pulling any punches. If this thing, you know, doesn't turn into a great ownership experience, you know, I will let you guys know every step of the way. But these have been out in Europe for several years now. They seem to be pretty proven at this point. I think they actually came out like 2021 model year is the first year for Europe. So this isn't like a newfangled thing, even though it's new for the States here. And so that's why I kind of had confidence. You know, the bugs have been worked out of these. They seem to be pretty reliable. The last generation 500e was actually really reliable too. And so I actually have, you know, full faith this will be a reliable, you know, a dependable little fun runaround, you know, buddy for the next 3.5 years here. I think, you know, another thing, you know, I love, this is also the red model, it's the base model, you know, $34,000 MSRP. And again, with discounts and the tax credit and everything, I mean, it was basically over 10 grand off to get to that, you know, 130 number. But I mean, I always just really love these. I love the red dashboard, you know, the colorful interior, you know, has all the basics. It still has wireless Apple CarPlay, stuff like the Chevy Equinox and Chevy Blazer didn't have, even though those deals were very good. And it's just, you know, very, I don't know, just very cohesive. And again, this is perfect for what I'm going to need. You know, it has a back seat, so if I need to, you know, drive my daughter around in a pinch, you know, I can throw a car seat back there. And, you know, just, again, use it as, you know, a nice little backup car, and one that's going to put a smile on my face when I look at it in the garage whenever I do happen to drive it. You know, I think it's going to be a really fun little thing. And so, yeah, I'm going to hit the road here on my drive home. I'm a little under 200 miles away from home, so it shouldn't be a long drive. And depending on the range, I mean, I think I will probably have to stop at least once, but should be a quick little 15-minute charge stop, you know, bathroom break kind of thing, and that'll be it. So I'm very thankful that Don Franklin was willing to bring it out to me here in Ohio, so I didn't have to do a, you know, super long road trip back. They took the first 300 miles or so off of that for me, so just a quick little drive home here this afternoon. And so yeah, I'm gonna share a few thoughts here once I'm out on the road, and then you know, show it back in the garage at home. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. I know, again, this is the last thing people said, man, this dude used to have a Mustang and now he's got a Fiat 500e, and I understand that, but again, for a backup car, these are great little runaround backup cars. Also, you know, very safe, being electric, you know, a little bit extra weight, 10 airbags in this thing as well, so they've come a long way from, you know, the little city cars of old, and I'm really excited for this. So anyway, let's hit the road. All right, so driving home in the 500e. I'm actually really happy with this on the highway. In my review, it was a pretty quick review that I had to film. I didn't actually have time to really do a lot of highway driving, but I'm pleasantly surprised that it's actually pretty quiet, pretty refined, nice smooth ride, and it's doing a great job out here on the highway. Now, this one being the base one, I don't have adaptive cruise. I also don't even have blind spot monitoring, but it's a small enough car, it's easy to manage without those creature comforts. And yeah, just motoring along here nice and smoothly. Now, I will say that to maximize my range, today it's actually 53 degrees. We have a, you know, an early start to the spring, it seems, here at the end of February. So I'm not running any, you know, heat or air conditioning. So, you know, I've got the HVAC system completely off to maximize that range. I'm also in the range mode that this has, but I'm still going to have to do at least one charge stop here. So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, you know, I'm just sticking to the speed limits here. You know, trying to, you know, go as reasonably slow as possible just to maximize that range. But you know, 141 miles is what this is rated at, and you know, some people have gotten, you know, well above that, depending on if you're doing strictly city stop and go, or if you're, you know, in favorable conditions. You know, it can't overperform that, but it doesn't give me any kind of range anxiety. You know, I've road tripped EVs before, no issues whatsoever, and so we'll just do one stop here. Hopefully it'll be uneventful and easy. And yeah, but I just tried out the stereo for the first time too, because I didn't bother doing that in the review. And stereo is actually really good for a bass sound system and a little thing like this. And yeah, really happy so far here in the first few miles. But yeah, let's see how that charge stop goes. All right, so I just did the charge stop, and it was completely easy and uneventful. And it was also one of the new Flying J ones that is a partnership with GM. I was talking about this in weekly updates here in the past year or so, and it's cool to see these things actually come to fruition. So it was all really good. The cool thing about the Fiat too is that, you know, it's such a small battery. It's a 42 kilowatt hour gross, but I think usable is somewhere in the mid to high 30s, and so it actually charges really fast, even though the peak charge rate is only 85 kilowatts. And during my charge session, I don't think I even cracked 70, but it was like 15 minutes. I literally went in to pee, came back out, and, you know, sat for about 5 minutes or so, and it was good to go. You know, so it's, you look at the spec sheet again, you look at the numbers, and I might be like, oh, well, that's, you know, gonna be terrible on a road trip. And yes, you have to stop, you know, every 100 to 150 miles, but like, you know, you're only there for a little bit of time because the battery's small, and this thing is just so efficient, you know, not being a massive amount of horsepower like every other EV out there these days. So, I mean, actually, I think it's a really nice little road trip. I've been really impressed with, yeah, just the smoothness and everything. The last little thing I want to mention for those of you who are still sticking around here is, you know, how I arrived at the Fiat in particular. So my top front runners really were, or initially I wanted a Hyundai Ioniq 6. I love the 6, and I love sedans, and you know, there were some pretty attractive lease deals that were advertised. There was advertisements as low as like $149 a month. Now that was with a few $1,000s down, but I thought, okay, maybe if you know, some of these places are actually doing better deals than what's advertised. Like, I mean, all the advertisements for the Fiat here, none of them say anything close to 130 a month, zero down. They're all like maybe 200 a month, zero down. But obviously the negotiating is what gets you to that better price. So I was like, hey, maybe, you know, these Hyundai dealers will deal and I'll get something, you know, actually close to that price point with zero down, maybe, if, you know, the stars align. And I just couldn't get the Hyundai cheap enough. No one was willing to deal that I could see. I think the lowest quote I got for an Ioniq 6 or even an Ioniq 5, I was fine with either one. The lowest I think I saw was something like $225 a month, which is still, I mean, solid for those things. You know, all of them are like, you know, $40,000 to $50,000 more expensive than this, more equipment, more range, more power, more everything. It's a lot more car. And if, you know, your mission isn't the same as mine of the cheapest thing possible, I think that, you know, those are still the better values, and I still adore them, but you know, no one was able to get down to a price point as low as this. You know, I did entertain basically everything though. I was open to just about anything. I even, you know, looked at like Super Solteras. I think you can walk away with one of those for, you know, about $200 to $250 a month, you know, zero down, sign and drive kind of thing again. But again, no one was able to get low enough. And even the Fiat, I mean, I went for over a month trying to get, you know, quotes from dealers to get lower and lower and lower, and it started being about $200 a month sign and drive. Then I had another dealer that was like, okay, how about 191? And then I had another dealer say 175, and then another dealer locally said, we'll match 175, and slowly kind of whittled away and said, okay, well, what more can I do? What more can I do? And I kind of just, since I wasn't in a hurry, I was like, you know what, that's still not low enough for me. Let me know if you can go lower. And then this one dealer in the middle of PA, they kept getting a little bit lower. They were like, how about 165? And then they were like, okay, how about, you know, if we do 150? And, you know, slowly, little by little, I'm like, okay, well, this is getting better and better. And I just didn't know, again, where the bottom was there. And they actually briefly offered me 120 a month, but then that was supposedly only for like 24 hours or something. And it was some special thing they were doing. And then whenever I was like, look, I called it back on Monday morning. I was like, I'll take it for 120. And they're like, sorry, it's past now. It's 147. I'm like, well, then no deal. Like, I don't want 147, especially doesn't feel good whenever you just offered 120. So then I wrote off that dealer, just kept on searching. I kept expanding my search radius. That's really the key to this as well. It's not going to be your local dealer around the corner. You got a road trip like I'm doing right now. You got to call around. You got to do the legwork. But if you're going to do the legwork and you're going to, you know, do a road trip, you can actually get, you know, these awesome deals. And once I opened that up, I was kind of getting tired and fed up of even calling. And I was like, you know, maybe I'm never going to find anything cheaper than 147. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to expand my search radius by another 100 miles. And I'm like, just going to call the one that's advertised the lowest. And this one was literally advertised 10 grand off, $24,000. Now that was including the tax credit and stuff, and ended up being, you know, a bigger discount than that at the end of the day. But, you know, just a dealer that I could tell was putting their best foot forward and saying, we're ready to make a deal publicly by, you know, putting that low price out there. And, you know, and then that's what's, you know, they were able to beat that 147 with 130 a month. And it was a great experience. And shout out once again to Don Franklin Automotive Group there. And, you know, Don Franklin, Fiat in particular, Michael was great and did a really good job. They delivered it great. The delivery driver was great. It all worked out really well. And so I'm just really happy, you know, that again, it's not a free car like Colorado. It's not, you know, like some of these other crazy deals people getting, you know, on other, you know, vehicles in other parts of the country. But I think for PA, I did very well for myself. Let me know what you think about the deal in the comments below. But yeah, we're about 40 minutes from home now, and yeah, this thing is actually also pretty much sticking very closely to its rated range. Even here, you know, it's 54 degrees. It's you know, sticking to that, you know, at least with the air conditioning and the heating off. You know, but it's hitting that mark. Everything's been flawless, and yeah, I have no complaints. Very happy with this, and so yeah, we will you know, see. Like I said, I'm going to do a video about once a year on this more often if there turns out to be anything more to talk about. But in the meantime, I really love it. I love, again, the retro styling. It's a, you know, so easy to park. That's the one thing that I really appreciated here, you know, in the past few hours is, you know, so tiny. So the turning radius is amazing, and parking is super easy. And that's what I always love small cars. That's really my passion. You know, I had a Mini Cooper, an R56, Mini Cooper S, about 10 years ago or so. so at this point. And you know, loved that thing. I had a Super BRZ small car, also loved that thing. I've really loved small cars. You know, I had about a 10-year, you know, affair with the Mustangs, and you know, I love those as well. But you know, getting back to small little hatchbacks and small little vehicles is, I think, really, you know, where my heart is. And so for that reason, I think this is just, it really fits what I need right now. And again, I would have taken anything cheap. You know, I was also looking at like Kia Niro. You know, I was considering the Chevys and anything else that, you know, was cheap enough, but I knocked on every door that I could, and you know, no one was able to beat the price of the Fiat. And then again, working with the great team at Stellantis, the great, you know, dealership, and the fun of this vehicle, just kind of me being drawn to this almost as like another opportunity in a Mini, since that was a, you know, like a 6-month thing I had with the R56, because that was just such an unreliable vehicle. You know, this is like my second attempt and chance at, you know, a fun little European hatchback kind of thing, and I'm really excited for this ownership experience here for the next 3.5 years. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts and my whole little adventure here in the 500e, and let me know what you think about the choice in the comments below. Stay tuned if you are someone who's interested in these. You know, I'll be giving my ownership thoughts here over the next 3.5 years, but in the meantime, it's going to be a really great little vehicle just to serve the channel, get me where I need to go, and make sure I always have that backup car at the ready. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.